A shopping mall in Pennsylvania was once worth $190 million. When it failed, and it failed completely, with vacancy rates above 90% and a building that was literally falling apart, it went to a foreclosure sale. The winning bid was $100 for a building the size of several city blocks on land that had been worth nearly $200 million. That's not a typo. That's Pittsburgh Mills. And it's not the strangest thing that happened to American malls in the last 20 years. Before this video is over, you're going to hear about a mall where a body was found buried behind it. A mall in one of America's richest cities that collapsed not because people got poor, but because people got scared to go inside. And the number that no one is talking about, 87%. That's the percentage of large American shopping malls projected to close within the next 10 years. We're going to talk about why. And the answer isn't the one most people think. To understand how a building worth $190 million sells for $100, you first have to understand what that building was supposed to be and what it actually became for the people inside it. The American mall wasn't originally built to sell things. Or rather, selling things was almost a side effect of what it was really designed to do. The first true enclosed mall in America opened in Minnesota in 1956, and its architect, Victor Gruen, had a specific vision. A European town square, indoors, climate-controlled, where people would gather, sit, meet, eat, and happen to shop while they were at it. Community infrastructure disguised as retail. And for about 30 years, it worked. At their peak in the 1980s and early 1990s, American malls were where teenagers spent their Saturday afternoons, where elderly people walked their morning miles before the stores opened, where first jobs happened and first kisses happened and entire adolescences were spent. Rolling Acres Mall in Akron, Ohio had a fountain with orange tiles where kids flicked pennies. It had an arcade called Aladdin's Castle. At its peak, 98% of its 140 stores were occupied, and on a Saturday afternoon, all of Akron showed up. Then 1995 happened, and everything changed. 1995 is the year that Rolling Acres Mall added its fifth anchor store, a Target, and hit its all-time high of 98% occupancy. It's also almost to the month when the decline started. A competing mall nearby was renovated. Big box retailers began opening standalone stores. The specific shoppers who had driven foot traffic through Rolling Acres started having other options. And the mall, like most malls of its era, had been built around a business model that only worked if everyone came, because the anchor stores needed the foot traffic from the smaller stores, and the smaller stores needed the foot traffic from the anchor stores. Remove one, and the whole system starts to wobble. By the late 1990s, Rolling Acres had two of its anchors downgraded to outlet stores. By 2000, the original developer sold it for $33.5 million, already a fraction of what it had cost to build. By 2006, Target left. By 2008, the electricity was cut off on Halloween night, and the remaining stores packed up and walked out the same evening. No new indoor megamall has been built in America since 2019. 6 million square feet of mall space was demolished in 2025 alone. And as of the beginning of 2026, malls are vacant at twice the rate of ordinary retail space. But here's what most people get wrong about why the standard explanation for the death of the American mall is Amazon and online shopping. The internet came, people stopped going to stores, malls died. Except the data doesn't quite support that. Here's what actually happened to Rolling Acres Mall in its final years. Women and teenage girls were being warned by friends and family not to go there because of safety concerns. The Akron Police Department had to open a substation inside the mall because the security team couldn't handle what was happening. Shoppers didn't leave because they found a better website. They left because they stopped feeling safe. That story? Safety, management failure, anchor departure triggering smaller departures triggering more departures, is the actual death spiral of most failed malls, and it has almost nothing to do with e-commerce. The Pittsburgh Mills Mall that sold for $100 had a management company that stopped paying its property taxes in 2006. Not because they couldn't afford it, because they didn't bother. That kind of institutional neglect is what turns a $190 million asset into a $100 sale. And then there's the strangest case of all. A mall in one of the richest, most expensive cities in America, a place where retail should thrive, that collapsed for a reason that has almost nothing to do with either the internet or bad management. San Francisco Center was not a struggling mall in a declining city. It was a premium mall in a city with some of the highest incomes in the country, anchored by Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's, in a location that should have been retail-proof. By 2024, it was empty. What happened was a compounding crisis that began with pandemic-era street conditions in downtown San Francisco. Homelessness, open drug use, and a shoplifting surge that made retail loss prevention nearly impossible. Nordstrom didn't close because people stopped wanting to shop there. Nordstrom closed because it couldn't afford to absorb the theft rates the location was generating. Once Nordstrom left, Bloomingdale's left. Once both anchor stores were gone, the foot traffic that sustained the smaller stores evaporated. The mall entered what economists call a death spiral, and once a mall death spiral starts, it almost never reverses. The building is still standing, still owned, still generating property tax obligations, and still empty. I want to stop here for a second and ask you something, because everything I've described so far, the 100 sale, the safety collapse, the anchor departure spiral, all of that describes malls dying. And the obvious conclusion is that malls are simply finished, that they're the next ghost town category, that what happened to coal towns in the 1960s is happening to mall towns now. But there's a number that completely changes that story, and almost no one is talking about it. 62%. That's the percentage of Gen Z's total retail purchases that happen in physical stores, not online, in stores. The generation that grew up with smartphones and same-day delivery, the generation that was supposed to finish off brick-and-mortar retail forever, is actually shopping in person at higher rates than older generations. So if the customers want to come, why are the malls still dying? The answer is that Gen Z doesn't want a mall. They want an experience. And most of the malls built between 1970 and 1995 were designed to deliver neither. The malls that are surviving in 2026 have converted anchor store space into medical clinics, gyms, apartment buildings, and indoor pickleball courts. They've replaced food courts with food halls. They've brought in entertainment, escape rooms, climbing walls, virtual reality experiences, to give people a reason to come that has nothing to do with buying a specific product they could get online for less. The malls that are failing are the ones whose owners tried to survive by slightly reducing rents and hoping existing retail tenants would eventually come back. They won't. The 87% projection for major mall closures over the next decade isn't a prediction of defeat. It's a description of a format that is being replaced by something else in the same buildings, on the same land, serving the same communities. Rolling Acres Mall in Akron, Ohio, the orange tile fountain, the penny flicking, Aladdin's castle, is now an Amazon fulfillment center. Every package that ships out of that facility ships from the exact footprint where a teenager once spent their Saturday afternoon. Whether that's progress or loss depends entirely on who you ask. After Rolling Acres closed and before it was demolished, urban explorers documented what was left inside. The skylights had been smashed. No one knew exactly when or by whom, and snow and rain had been pouring through the gaps for years. The carpet in the old cinema had absorbed so much water that walking on it felt like stepping on wet sponges. Ceiling tiles had fallen and stayed where they landed. The orange-tiled fountain was drained. In 2011, a man was found electrocuted outside the building. He'd been stealing copper wire. The body was so badly burned that police had to use dental records to identify him. Later that same year, another body was found in a shallow grave behind the mall. A building that 98% of Akron had visited at its peak. Kids with their pennies, elderly walkers before the stores opened, first jobs, first kisses, had become something that needed to be identified by dental records. The demolition was completed in 2019. The Amazon fulfillment center opened shortly after. Closed malls in America sit empty for an average of 3 years and 11 months before anything happens to them. In that window, what was once a community center becomes what Rolling Acres became, a place where copper thieves work in the dark, and bodies are found behind the building. That's not a story about retail. That's a story about what happens when the infrastructure of a community collapses and nothing fills the space. Pittsburgh Mills sold for $100. Rolling Acres is an Amazon warehouse. San Francisco Center is empty in one of the most expensive real estate markets on earth. And 87% of America's large malls are projected to close within the next decade. The interesting question isn't whether malls are dying. They clearly are, at least in their original form. The interesting question is what fills the space. Because the space itself, the land, the buildings, the parking lots, still exists in the middle of communities that still exist. In some cases, it's medical clinics and apartments. In some cases, it's Amazon warehouses. In some cases, it's just sitting there, empty, for 3 years and 11 months on average, while the community around it adjusts to having lost what was, for 30 years, the place where it gathered. If there's a dead mall near you, One that's still technically open but clearly in the process of becoming something else? Tell me in the comments. Name it. Because these places are disappearing faster than anyone is documenting them. Subscribe. Because the next place on this channel is already gone. We just haven't gotten there yet.